I'm Duncan McLeod, and this is the TechCentral podcast brought to you today by the folks at Trend Micro. I'm joined now by Mannie Tzingakis, who is technical lead for sub-Saharan Africa at Trend Micro. Mannie, welcome. I see you started your career as a police officer. I'm guessing internet security software is not that far removed from policing. I mean, you're still trying to catch the bad guys, right?
Absolutely. Thanks, Duncan. Yeah, it's great to have, being with you. I started my career off as a police officer, as a detective, believe it or not, for 8 years. And, it's not very far removed. Criminals are criminals, whether they be in the cybersecurity space or in the normal security space.
Yeah. Why did you get into policing in the first place, as a matter of interest? And what were some of the cases you worked on?
So to be really honest with you, when I finished school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And at that time, you still had to do your national service.
Right.
So I joined it as part of my national service and just stuck it out for 8 years. I investigated everything from your normal assault to murder, armed robbery. Yeah, that's the sort of stuff I did for 8 years.
So you caught a few guys in your time.
Absolutely. Yeah, we did.
Good stuff.
Put them away as well.
Sorry, what's that?
And put them away as well.
Put them away. Good to hear.
Yeah.
Good to hear. Good to hear, Mannie. So how did you end up going from the SAPS to the IT industry? I believe you had never touched a computer before that point.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things in the police was, obviously it's not the best sort of professions if you want to raise a family and have a family. It's quite dangerous. I thought of changing careers, and I didn't know what to do, to be really honest. And my brother at the time was in IT, so I asked him to show me what computers do.
Right.
And the rest is history. He showed me, and I picked it up.
You took a PC apart with him, I believe.
Yeah, I took it apart from scratch in the old days with the floppy drives and the stiffy drives and that, and you still had to do the IR jumpers and all of that sort of stuff. So it was I picked it like duck to water. I really enjoyed it, and that's what I did. That's what I chose to make my career.
Fantastic. So it's quite a jump from policing into the IT industry. How did you get involved in the IT security space specifically?
So what I did is after leaving the police, I obviously managed to get a break in IT, and I started growing my career from there, specifically around IT management and infrastructure management. And one of the projects we worked on was around building data centers and the like. And we obviously worked with a big team, and one of the teams that were working with us at the time was obviously the security team, getting firewalls in place and making sure the data center is secure and that. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it, securing the environment. I learned a lot, picked up from what the guys were doing, and I thought maybe that's where I'd like to focus my career on is security. And I suppose having been a police officer in the security sector, so to speak, I thought I enjoy that sort of work. So that's where I decided to make it my focus.
Fantastic. Well, tell me, Mannie, tell me a bit about Trend Micro. I see the company was founded in the late 80s in the US, in California, I think. But today it's headquartered in Japan and in Irving, Texas. But it got its start in the PC antivirus business, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we started about 30 years ago. It was started by our CEO, co-founded by our CEO, Ava. She's still CEO now.
Mm-hmm.
And it started 30 years ago, protecting the end user, making sure that the users are safe. We've always been security focused, and we've really grown. I think, a lot of people, especially in South Africa, still consider us a sort of end user vendor, but we're not. We're much more than that. We have really grown in the security space. We, especially around cloud and securing the cloud. And so, we've been around for 30 years. We haven't changed. Our security has always been focused around security, and we've adapted to the changes that have happened over the last 30 years, especially around security.
Yeah, and I can imagine the changes in that field have been absolutely immense in that time.
Absolutely, yeah. Constantly adapting and innovating, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but maybe this is a good point. Just very briefly, Mannie, to take us through the solutions that Trend Micro offers. Are you still in the PC antivirus game? Let's start there.
Absolutely. We still do antivirus or endpoint protection, as we call it nowadays, for the end user. And we do various things. We've got quite a holistic solution to security. We do server protection, which is part of our Cloud One solution. We do EDR, endpoint detection and response, XDR, which we're now looking at, and we do email security. So we've got quite a big range, and we are leaders in almost every quadrant, security quadrant that we put our hand and focus to. So we are number one when it comes to cloud security. We own 35% of the market at the moment, when market share when it comes to cloud security, and that's one of our main focuses, and where we're going with, especially in today's sort of environment when it comes to COVID-19 and the lockdown and that.
Now, we're going to talk about Cloud One in some detail a bit later in the podcast and cloud security, because it's not entirely clear in my mind why you need security in the cloud, especially if you're dealing with a hyperscaler. But I'm gonna pick your brain in some more detail on that. But you mentioned that you've been recognized highly by some of the big analyst firms, including Gartner, IDC, and Forrester. How important is it to Trend Micro to have that recognition?
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at the likes of the different analysts and IDC, Gartner, and that, Trend Micro has been doing and protecting the cloud. We were one of the first vendors protecting the cloud 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And we've been doing it for 10 years already. And we are constantly striving to focus on security, be innovative, adapt to the security landscape, threat landscape, and constantly adapting ourselves. And having the likes of Gartner, Forrester, and the different analysts is important to us, because it, number one, holds us accountable, and number two, it validates what we are trying to do and achieve from a security space. And the fact that we can have analysts, validate our product. Also, just to give you something interesting is we did a webinar last week, in fact, and we asked one of the questions we asked the customers and the clients that were on the webinar. We asked them, do you guys use analysts to direct your security strategy? Mm-hmm. And almost 80% of them said yes, they do. They all look at the different analysts to make a security decision when purchasing a security solution. So it's very important for us.
Oh, interesting. I didn't realize it was so high. All right. So Mannie, what trends has Trend Micro identified over the last little while since the COVID-19 pandemic started, and obviously the lockdown began here in South Africa towards the end of March? We're just moving to level 2 this week. Fantastic news. But we've been through 5 tough months of lockdown, people working from home. I think people are tired of it. I think that a majority of people, and this was certainly never the case before, are actually looking forward to going back to the office. Are things radically different now that people are working from home? Has the threat landscape changed significantly?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the threat landscape has definitely changed. I mean, we've seen, the cyber criminal is never at rest, and they'll make every opportunity to exploit the situation. And I mean, to give you an idea, from February to the end of March, when the lockdown sort of happening around the world, we almost saw a 220-time increase in COVID-19 spam from cyber criminals, as well as to get a 220% increase, if not more, increase in new URLs, phishing URLs. That's almost that's quite an increase in cyber criminals trying to breach your environment. I mean, if you look at 220%, that's one URL that can one person just has to click on one URL and your environment is at risk. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So is it phishing mainly that's seen an increase?
Yeah, phishing emails been an increase. Obviously, ransomware attacks have been an increase, especially from people working from home, people not knowing or ignorant of how to secure their home environments. And also, you obviously get different. One of the breach detections reports that I read recently showed that almost 22% of breaches are as a result of human error, or ignorance, for that matter. And so that's people working from home has played a big change in the threat landscape of how cyber criminals exploit that.
I have noticed that there's been that the phishing emails have gotten better. My bank, well, it wasn't my bank; it was some criminal network enterprise somewhere, has been sending me emails purportedly on behalf of my bank, and they're so well done. I had to look at this email for ages before I figured out that no, there's something not quite kosher. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, they're definitely getting cleverer and more sophisticated. I mean, we've seen where they've actually gone to as far as simulating a bank's environment, a website, so that it looks identical from logging into your two-factor authentication. And that's how far they've gone to actually duplicating a financial institution's website. I mean, that's how far they go.
No, it's incredible what the extent to which these criminals will go to defraud you. But it's, I mean, who's doing this? It's not your. I mean, these are international crime syndicates, right? From Russia, from Eastern Europe, and elsewhere.
Yeah, it's become, you know what? It's become a very lucrative business for cybercrime. Has unfortunately become a very lucrative business, and yeah, it is syndicates, but it's even moving beyond syndicates now. I mean, a lot of the syndicates are even outsourcing their sort of ransomware and phishing attacks and data. I mean, data has become very valuable on the dark web, credit card information and the likes, and that's where the money is for criminals. Even to the point of outsourcing ransomware and the likes to amateur hackers that can try to make money off of it. So that's what they're doing.
So they sell the software to enable you to run the criminal scams.
Yeah, to create your own syndicate, if you like. I mean, that's where the business is.
Syndicate in a box.
Yeah.
It's shocking, actually.
Very.
It's shocking. All right. So you mentioned, I mean, a lot of employees are not tech savvy like you and I, Manny. A lot of people have been asked to go and work from home. They're lucky if they've perhaps got a fiber connection at home, more often than not, maybe an LTE connection, or they're connecting via their cell phone. But many corporate employees are not tech savvy, and they're suddenly thrown into the home environment. They're using a router that they might have bought 5 years ago, which has never had its firmware updated, and they're connecting to company corporate systems. Is how much of a problem is this? Is it, I mean, do companies need to pay real attention to the IT infrastructure, particularly the communications infrastructure, the routers, etc., that people are using at home? Or is it okay to just throw up a line of defense, maybe through a VPN and hope for the best?
I think both play a role, Duncan. I think the first and most important part is obviously educating the end user, educating the employee on how to be aware, not to be ignorant. And I mean, simple steps like not using your personal PC at home, for example, to do business on, things like that, that users are unaware of, and due to ignorance, don't know how to better protect themselves against cybersecurity, even the companies. Yeah, I think educating the end user on how they can protect the environment, simple steps, and keeping it simple, not overcomplicating things like having a complicated password on your Wi-Fi router, for example, things like that. Making sure that you don't use your personal PC, you keep your business and your personal separate. Making sure that that when you're using stiffy USB sticks and the like and hard drives, that they are used separately for business and for things like that are definitely ways to go to protect the user from home. But then, of course, having things like VPN are very important, where clients can VPN into the business to be able to access resources and the like are also very important.
Yes. But I imagine these things are going to slip through the cracks, and someone at home is going to fire up their Windows XP computer that hasn't been patched since 2009.
Exactly. Yeah.
Connect through their ADSL router, which hasn't been patched since they bought it in 2003, and then connect to the corporate system. So I imagine a lot of the corporate IT department, the security specialists within the company, also need to do a lot of work to knowing that these things are going to happen, and that even if they educate end users and say, well, you must only use this, you mustn't share USB sticks, you must do this, and this, you mustn't do this, and this, it's still going to happen.
Absolutely, yeah. It's still going to happen. You have to be extra vigilant, and I think um, um, educating users is definitely the first step, but then obviously putting the right processes in place, the right technology in place is also a big must. A lot of users inevitably, if you don't provide them of a way of doing business, for example, they're going to find their own way to do it, to make their lives convenient. And so that's one of the biggest issues is, many people have used the term shadow IT,
Yeah.
where users spin up or do their own thing to be able to make their lives a little bit easier. So things like that people have to consider when users are working from home.
Yeah, and shadow IT, I imagine, has exploded during the work from home measures. The whole,
Yeah,
the whole,
absolutely.
the whole concept of BYOD, or bring your own device, and we know people are using their own equipment at home,
Yeah.
and sometimes even the companies are sanctioning it because this company can't afford to give every employee a laptop.
Yeah.
So, what should the approach be from the company? I mean, should you? What's your take? I'm guessing you like the idea of a softly educate the user, encourage
Yeah.
them along the way, rather than taking a big stick and beating them over the head when they do something wrong.
Yeah, I think I definitely. I mean, at the end of the day, as I said earlier, it's most breaches happen because of user error or user ignorance, and I think your biggest investment in any organization are your people. So if you take the time to invest in your people as much as you do in technology, I mean, it's going to save you a lot of headaches going down the line. And I think finding simple ways, but helpful, or rather, I don't want to use the word fun because you want to keep it serious, but a lot of companies are using what we call gamification to sort of educate their users on how to protect against and become more educated around cybersecurity. So it's using the right approach, making it simple, not complicated. I think that's the way to go with users.
Okay. So, Mannie, what are some of the top best practice ways organizations can go about securing their end users? We've touched on virtual private networks, which is obviously a key part of the toolkit. But what are some of the other things companies can be doing and should be doing?
Yeah, so I think one of the ways is obviously then the most common ways is having endpoint protection on your laptops. But the thing is most companies have endpoint protection that works within their environment. As soon as the user leaves the environment or takes the laptop out of the environment, the agent can't connect back to the environment to get its updates or its pattern files and the like, and so it starts falling behind in keeping up to date. So it's having a product, and one of our products are geared towards that is to, once the user leaves the work environment, it's able to connect to the vendor space and be able to get its updates from there, and pattern updates from there. So it's constantly up to date. That's one of the key things. Obviously, the other things is VPN that we discussed. Again, educating your users around protecting and making sure they, like, to give you an example, we had a campaign at the beginning of the lockdown where we made our product available for 6 months. We call it smart security, so that users can protect their smartphones and their tablets and that. And many users don't. They've got systems in their environment, at their homes, like PlayStations and Xboxes and all that sort of stuff. How do you protect against that? And it's making sure that the peripheral stuff is also protected and got protection on it.
So how do you do that? Do you put together a document that you send through to all your employees working from home, saying these are the guidelines, and keep it as simple as possible? Because there's so many factors at play here that I suppose it's easy for a company to miss a few options or issues.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think having a clear strategy and process in place is important. Having policies in place, but also communicating those to the user, of how to doing it for them. Providing business equipment is maybe also a first step. And once you it's very difficult telling a person to use their own private phone, but then locking it down so much so that they can't use it for anything else excepting their business. So if it's things like that that companies have to consider, is if person's working from home, and many companies have been doing this, is providing tablets and new phones that are only specifically used for business. That's the sort of way to go and do it.
Yeah, not always affordable for every company, and obviously we're in a tight economic situation at the moment, so it might be difficult for some companies. But I suppose that's always ideal. Now let's talk a bit about cloud. We hinted at this a bit earlier in our discussion. Trend Micro is a leader, as you mentioned, in cloud security. What is involved in providing cloud security solutions, and how do these differ from the traditional security solutions that companies have deployed?
Yeah. So thanks, Zane. So pretty much one of the things we're starting to see, and particularly in South Africa, is and especially during the COVID-19 sort of pandemic and lockdown, is people are obviously having to sort of bring the digital transformation, make it happen a lot sooner.
Yes.
And a lot of companies have already started speaking about moving to the cloud and moving their data centers to the cloud for obvious reasons. And one of the main reasons is pricing. And one of the things that is becoming very important in most companies nowadays is automation and agility, speed of developing your product and bringing it to market. And so one of the best ways to do that is obviously the cloud. The cloud is very versatile. You're able to spin up instances. We've seen the likes of Netflix and many other streaming providers becoming more and more prominent because of the capability of cloud, being able to increase your cloud workload and decrease it without spending a lot of money and on having running instances. And so that's where the world is actually moving toward, agility, speed, automation, and you're also starting to see the rise of DevOps, the DevOps community, where developers don't have the time to sit and worry about traditional methods of securing the infrastructure. They want it to be fast, they want it to be quick, they want it to be part of the development pipeline and process. And so this is where cloud security becomes important, is how do you adapt to automation and speed and secure the environment in a serverless and container environment at the same time. And so that's where our Cloud One platform from Trend Micro comes into play.
Mm-hmm. All right. So just to understand, explain to me what the sales cycle looks like for Trend Micro for a cloud offering. Do you continue to work with the same customers you've been working with previously, your corporate end users, or do you deal directly with hyperscalers and then people can buy the Trend Micro service through those hyperscalers? How does it work?
So pretty much what we do is, and I just want to say this from the outset, many clients or many partners, companies, when looking for a security solution, don't want just a security solution. They're looking for someone that can partner with them on the journey. And this is the view that Trend Micro has taken. We always, and our CEO, Ava, will always say this, is that we are people and people customer focused, centric first. And so the way we approach it is we're wanting our cloud solution helps in both ways. It helps moving and your customer and organizations that have currently got data centers, moving them to the cloud. So we call it the hybrid solution. So we're able to protect them while they're busy moving to the cloud, and then we're also able to protect them completely and totally once they are in the cloud, or even if they've started up afresh, new businesses and new organizations started it afresh in the cloud. So that's the sort of approach that we take. And then we work predominantly with the client, getting them to do that from beginning to end.
Okay. So where does the integration say with, let's say you're a bank and you're outsourcing your IT or moving your IT to Amazon Web Services, or Microsoft, or any one of the hyperscalers. How would you then work with the hyperscale operation in terms of providing your security solutions in that cloud environment?
Yeah. So we definitely have, we've got partnerships with all the major cloud providers. We are platinum partners with AWS, we're platinum partners with Microsoft and Google. And so we play in that space, and we are able to. Clients can even purchase our product through the likes of AWS Marketplace, for example, if they wanted to.
Right.
So they can even go as far as that to be able to buy our product and secure their environment, or they can obviously approach us directly or work through one of our partners to be able to do that.
Great, thanks, Mannie. That clears that up for me. Now, before I let you go today, Trend Micro recently conducted a research study called "Head in the Clouds." This was some research, I believe, that really looked at how enterprises, correct me if I'm wrong here, Mannie, enterprises are utilizing cloud and how they see themselves using it in the years ahead. Why was the research commissioned, and did it cover the South African market at all?
Yes, so it covered the global market. We did across. It was globally done in conjunction with all our regions. And the main reason for it is with regards to the specific security landscape, and especially around the COVID-19 lockdown. One of the things that we're starting to see a lot of, and we actually did a 2020 predictions. One of the major things we saw as our 2020 predictions was the DevOps environment that I spoke about, artificial intelligence becoming increasingly more and more being used more and more. Things like deepfake, for example, where people are using artificial intelligence, for example, to disguise their voices to sound like a CEO, cloning their assistant and pretending to be that CEO to release funds. We actually saw a case like that in the States. And so the reason we did this is to see how users and specifically organizations and employees within those organizations are adapting to the new threat landscape. And that's one of the main reasons we did the research.
Okay, all right. So what would you say were the top 2 or 3 findings that came out of the research?
So the way we approach the research is to sort of identify what we called cloud personas, to see how we sort of saw 4 different personas within the employee as to how they would utilize the cloud and different cloud instances. And we're not only talking about cloud infrastructure, we're talking about SaaS and the likes. So service as a software as a service. And we saw sort of 4 personas come out. We saw the very fearful persona, the guys that are sort of, that even decline a task before actually doing it because they're uncertain as to, they'd rather wait for advice before they do something. We saw the conscientious persona who is very conscientious, understands and works with the organization to help their cybersecurity. We saw the very ignorant, they don't have a clue, and then we saw the sort of daredevils, the guys that are more likely to sort of spin up your shadow IT,
right,
and have environments. And we looked at different ways to approach each of those personas and how we work with them to make them more cybersecurity aware and the like.
So how do you rein in a daredevil?
So I think the approach to the daredevil approach is again, it's working with them rather than against them, and understanding why they're doing what they're doing. You know, a lot of people do shadow IT because they're not trying to be rebels without a cause, so to speak, but they're wanting to be able to do their job better. And they are, and so what they do is they try and find more interesting ways to do it because IT is slow, or they're not getting the response they need. And so I think it's working with them to understand why they are trying to do what they're doing, and then educating them around it and making it simple in the way you do it.
I'd imagine that the daredevil persona that Trend Micro created through this research is probably the most innovative character within the organization. IT might not like what he's doing, but the fact is he or she is doing it, and is probably one of those people that takes the organization forward, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So
and I think
don't annoy them too much.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the important thing here. Is I think, security is never about making lives more difficult for your employees. It should never be about that. It's really about working with them, understanding why they're doing things, and I think that's why security always gets a bad name. Is always second or third or fourth down the line for budget, because it's always considered as making people's lives more difficult, and it should never be that case. It should always be a case of we work with the end user to understand why they're wanting to do things, and then make their lives as simple as possible in achieving their goal. And I think that's where we wanted to go.
I imagine there are 4 personas as well in the IT department. There's the control freak, which I think everyone in the end user department hates.
Yeah.
And those are the guys who try to lock everything down and make life difficult for those daredevils. So it'd be interesting to see it from.
To do research, absolutely. I mean, you get your guys that are power hungry as well and want to control everything, as you said. You get your guys that are very lax and want to make friends with everybody. Yeah, you definitely get those personas, I'm sure.
Yeah. So of those 4, fearful, conscientious, ignorant, and daredevil, which is the most dangerous to an organization?
Sure, that's a very good question. I would almost say they're ignorant because, the daredevil is still, they know what they're doing. They know that they're trying to bypass the system, and they have some sort of strategy behind that sort of bypass. But when it comes to ignorance, I think ignorance is where people are completely and totally unaware. Those are the guys that will click on a malicious URL because it looks legitimate, and that's where the exposure happens.
And if something happens, the IT department will sort it out for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And fearful, I thought your answer might be fearful. Would you place them as the second most dangerous to the organization?
I wouldn't say dangerous from a security perspective, because I would maybe from a productivity perspective, because they generally the guys that sort of might even decline a task before actually, because they're too scared to go ahead, and it's your this whole thing of the sky is falling type thing.
Yes. Yeah. Interesting. How do you deal with people who are fearful? Is it an education thing?
Yeah, I think it definitely is an education thing. Again, I think it's it's also working. I think the key thing here is keeping stuff simple. I mean, for example, Trend Micro we've got and it's a free tool for any organization to use, really, to be able to train the users, and it's a very fun way of doing it as well. We call it Phishing Insight. Any organization can subscribe. They can then go on a campaign to educate the users on how to watch out for phishing, and it's got very short 5 minutes informative videos, and it actually simulates a phishing attack. Whereas when the user clicks on it, it automatically notifies you in the back end to say this user has clicked on it and they failed. You can then immediately send them an email, and you can then let them watch a 5-minute video to show them where they went wrong. And it's little things like that you can use to educate, and you can make it fun. You can do a leaderboard, for example, where you incentivize a user. If they pass, they get a voucher or something. Things like that you can do to educate those guys. Interesting and engaging for them.
So it's called Phishing Insight on the Trend Micro website.
Yeah, you can just type Phishing Insight on Google, and it will take you to the.
Great, and that's obviously phishing with a PH and not an F.
Before
I let you go, the daredevil persona. How do companies deal with the daredevil persona? Is there a way of sandboxing what they do and perhaps making it less risky to the organization while allowing them to do what they want to do from an innovation perspective?
There's definitely definite ways of sandboxing in that again. But I think it's working with them and not against them. You don't want to prevent them from doing what they're wanting to do. And I think it's also understanding what they're trying to achieve. They often a lot of daredevils do something because, as I said, the IT is blocking them from doing it. And so I think bringing them on the journey, helping them understand what they're trying to do, and maybe even rewarding them and making them champions in your cause. But if you can keep things simple for them, then they're happy. And a lot of your guys, your DevOps team especially, who are innovators, they're constantly on the cutting edge of trying to release their technology and bring it to market. Those are the sort of guys that spin up and have your shadow IT because things are too complicated for them. So the simpler you make it for them, the easier it is.
So the message is work with them, not against them.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly it.
Thanks, Mannie. This has been a fantastic discussion. Mannie Tzingakis is a technical lead for sub-Saharan Africa at Trend Micro. Thanks for sharing your insights with us today.
Thank you, Duncan. Appreciate it. Appreciate the time.